134 BCE, northern Hispania. The sun bakes the rocky hills of what is now modern-day Spain. But then, it was the edge of the Roman Republic, and resistance still burned in the Celtiberian heart. For 20 years, the Romans had tried to tame this land, but the hill tribes of Iberia, wild, proud, and unyielding, refused to bow. And at the centre of it all stood one small city, Numantia, a place the world has mostly forgotten. But once, it forced the greatest empire on earth to its knees. Numantia was no grand capital. It had no towering walls, no famous kings, no vast army, just 4,000 people, a few thousand warriors, and a hilltop fortress carved from the land itself. But what it did have was defiance, a stubborn refusal to surrender to Rome, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. Rome had conquered Gaul, crushed Carthage, and marched through Macedonia. But Hispania bled them dry. Roman generals came and went. Legions burned villages, and yet the rebels vanished into the hills again and again. And of all the cities Rome hated most, Numantia was the worst, because every time they came for it, it held. In 153 BCE, Roman forces first tried to subdue the region. It was supposed to be easy, but guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and brutal terrain turned every Roman march into a nightmare. The Celtiberians knew their land, and they fought like ghosts. But Numantia went beyond that. It humiliated the Romans, again and again and again, until finally Rome had enough. In 134 BCE, the Senate sent one man, the best they had, Scipio Aemilianus, the man who destroyed Carthage, razed it to the ground, and sowed salt in its fields. Now, he was sent to do the same, to Numantia. This time, Rome wouldn't just fight, it would erase. Scipio arrived with 30,000 troops, engineers, siege weapons, cavalry, the full force of the Roman machine. Numantia had perhaps 4,000 civilians and 2,000 fighters, barely trained, poorly equipped. But they had one massive advantage. They would rather die than be conquered. Scipio didn't launch a frontal assault. He didn't even try. Instead, he ordered a siege, not just a blockade, but a total encirclement. 7 fortified Roman camps were built, trenches were dug, and towers raised. No food in, no one out. He dammed the nearby Duero River, poisoned what little supply remained. The trap was set. Inside the city, starvation set in. First the animals, then the roots, then the leather. There were stories, disturbing ones, of families boiling sandals into soup, of parents watching their children waste away, of bones being ground into powder to stretch the last crumbs of grain. But no one surrendered, no one defected. They endured, week after week, month after month, until the Romans themselves began to doubt, what kind of people choose starvation over surrender? Scipio was unmoved. He ordered his troops to wait. His message to the city was simple: surrender, or be forgotten by history. But Numantia chose a different path. The leaders of the city, brave men like Megara and Avarus, knew the end was near. The last of the food was gone. Disease had crept through the cramped homes, and yet, still, they refused to raise the white flag. Instead, they lit torches, and they made a decision the world would never forget. Rather than let their families be enslaved, rather than watch their children marched in chains to Rome, they would destroy their own city. Fathers ended the lives of their own sons. Women took their lives before Roman hands could claim them, and then they set Numantia on fire. They burned their homes, their crops, their history. They turned the hilltop into an inferno, a funeral pyre for a people who refused to kneel. When the Romans finally breached the walls, they found ash and silence. The few survivors were dragged to Rome in chains, paraded through the streets as trophies, but no one cheered. Even the Romans, brutal and cold, had to admit this was not a victory. Scipio had completed his mission. Numantia was gone. Its name was scratched from maps, its stones scattered, its fields salted, but something lingered in the air. A question: had Rome truly won? Or had Numantia, in choosing death over submission, carved its name deeper into history than any Roman general ever could? In the years that followed, Numantia became a legend, not because it survived, but because it chose how to fall. The Roman historian Appian recorded its story with grim respect, as did others. The people of Hispania, and later Spain, would come to see Numantia not as a failure, but as a symbol of courage, of sacrifice, of a spirit that refuses to be broken. Today, the ruins of Numantia still stand, near the modern town of Gari, in the province of Soria. Quiet, windswept, empty. But if you walk those stones, if you close your eyes and listen, you can almost hear it. The cries, the fire, the resistance. Because what happened on that hill over 2,000 years ago still echoes today. In every people who choose dignity over defeat, in every moment where the weak rise against the strong, in every whisper of freedom that defies oppression, there is a little bit of Numantia. So when you think of Rome, don't just think of emperors or armies or conquest. Remember the city it couldn't break, the city that chose fire over chains, the city that won by losing. Numantia, forever burned, forever remembered.